What started as a mafia marriage deal was already wild, but the real madness began when the monster groom turned out to be the only man who treated Evelyn like a human being. Her father thought he was buying protection with his daughter's life. Huge mistake, because the minute Evelyn stepped into Luca's world, the whole game flipped. Secret leverage, courthouse wedding, public humiliation, gunfire, revenge, and one father-level betrayal so brutal it changed everything. Beneath all the chaos, the story hit hard with one powerful truth. The people who claim to protect her may destroy her, while the most dangerous man in the room may be the only one willing to set her free. And the final twist, it doesn't just shock, it scars.
Before Evelyn Cross, the marriage contract rests, its ink a stark, fresh wound on the vellum. She betrays no reaction, no protest, a stillness conditioned by 13 years of chosen silence. Her father had finally priced her muteness. Opposite, Luca Moretti, a man whose history is etched in violence, watches her, awaiting the pen stroke that would finalize this transaction. The catalysts are starkly clear. Her sister carries a child, her father's finances are collapsing, and Evelyn has become the currency to settle the debt. This lawyer's office, heavy with the scent of aged leather, is the closing room for her coerced sale. She maintains an extraordinary physical composure, a state held for more than 20 minutes in the chair her father had indicated. Her body is a closed fortress, hands clasped, her eyes fixed on the desk, a bulwark between her and the man who was now, by law, her husband. Light from the vast windows cuts the room in two, veiling documents she was forbidden to read in shadow. The city's distant symphony provides a jarring counterpoint to her inner vacuum. The lawyer, Dominic, aims a question directly at her. Do you grasp the terms presented? She offers no reply as expected. Her father interjects on her behalf, asserting, she grasps them. Her father's tone is clipped and contemptuous. Richard Cross, a man of many public masks, developer, benefactor, is, in this room, simply a puppeteer. He is dressed in a Tom Ford suit, an armor he reserves for his most significant negotiations. Disqualified. Evelyn is wholly capable of understanding what is being offered. The word offered is a deliberate distortion of demanded. Seated across from them, Luca Moretti's posture is one of casual command, a silent broadcast of his absolute confidence. He is younger than one might expect, perhaps 32 or 33, with features reminiscent of a Roman sculpture, a chiseled jaw, dark hair, and the olive skin of Mediterranean lineage. Yet, his eyes are what truly command attention. They are a deep, unsettling brown, nearly black, and their focus is unnervingly direct. He has not been studying her with the predatory gaze one might anticipate, but with a detached curiosity, as if she were an unexpected complication in his equation. The terms are clear, Dominic says, returning to his script. The contract mandates the union be made official within a fortnight. Miss Cross would keep her personal wealth. Mr. Moretti would supply a home, security, and finances. Both were required to attend public functions. Get to the relevant clause, her father cuts in. A slight tremor in Richard Cross's knee betrays a flicker of anxiety, a rare crack in his facade. He is fixated on the clause of protection. Dominic clears his throat. It states that in return for this marriage, Mr. Moretti will settle all business conflicts involving the Cross family and shield Miss Sarah Cross and her unborn child from any reprisal. The sound of her sister's name triggers a physical reflex. Her hand flies to her heart, a gesture of self-preservation tied to the trauma at age 12 that stole her voice and her mother. Her father seizes her hand, forcing it down. He leans close, hissing a private ultimatum. You will do this, he whispers. The command a direct threat against her sister's well-being, or Sarah answers for my mistakes. You know the kind of men they are. You know what they will do to her and to the baby. It is a classic maneuver of the narcissist, offloading blame while twisting the emotional knife. A vice tightens around her chest. The threat is real. Her father's business had devolved from unethical to deadly, amassing debts to violent men. The price was either blood or this bond. Her sister, 8 months along, was the unaware collateral. "Mr. Moretti," her father projects, "my daughter accepts your terms." Luca's reply shatters the room's dynamic. "Does she?" His voice is deeper than anticipated, edged with an accent. His gaze has never left Evelyn, because I have not heard her say so. A weighted silence descends. Dominic shifts uncomfortably in his chair. Her father's jaw clenches. Inside Evelyn's chest, something fractures. The sudden shock of surprise, or perhaps it is hope. Her own will, so long buried, has been suddenly summoned. "My daughter cannot speak," her father bites out, each word a shard of glass. "She has been mute since she was 12. I am her legal proxy." Luca cuts him off with 2 words. "I can read." He pulls out a phone, types, and pushes it across the polished surface. The screen shows a fresh note. "Sign language. I will learn. Or we can use this." Her father's protest dies before it begins, silenced by a single, definitive gesture from Luca. The balance of power had irrevocably shifted. "Miss Cross and I require a private word. You may wait outside." As Richard balks, Luca's voice hardens. "Outside. This is my building, Mr. Cross." "You approached me out of desperation, with no other cards to play. Let us not be confused about who holds the power here." The father lurches to his feet. He hesitates, torn between his pride and his survival. He glances at his daughter, then pivots and leaves. 5 minutes, he warns. "Take 10, Luca counters. "Breathe some fresh air. You look as if you need it." The door clicks shut. The lawyer trails behind. She is now alone with the man who just bought her. Luca stands and moves around the desk. His grace is measured, suggesting a deep well of controlled violence. He pauses when he sees her flinch, a Pavlovian fear response. He then kneels to meet her gaze, a disarming gesture, and offers the phone. "This is what I know," he says softly. "Your father angered the wrong people. They wanted him dead. I made a different arrangement. This marriage is his shield." He lets the words settle. "But you didn't make this problem, and it appears you are the one paying the price." With trembling fingers, she accepts the device. "This is what I need to know," Luca continues, "and I require the truth. Are you being forced to do this? Because if so, we find another solution. Your father's debt is not yours to bear." She looks up, scanning his face for the deception, for the hidden bars of the trap she knows must be there. Men with his power do not grant freedom. They offer new cages. Yet his gaze is steady and patient. Her thumbs glide over the glass. "My sister Sarah, she is pregnant. If I refuse, they will harm her." Luca reads the words, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly as he nods. "The Valentinos? Yes, they would," he agrees. "So, I have no choice," she types. "There is always a choice," he says simply. "Some just carry a higher cost. This is mine. I require this alliance for my family, but I have no use for a prisoner. If you consent to this, you do so as my partner, on equal ground. I will not be your keeper, nor will I allow him to be." Her fingers race across the screen. "Why offer this? You do not know me." "No," he agrees. "But I know men like your father, and I know the look of someone who has been caged for a very long time." He slides a card over the desk. "My personal number. You have until tomorrow evening to give me your answer. Your decision, not his. She types, he will never let me refuse. A sharp, cold smile touches Luca's lips. Then he is about to learn what happens when a man tries to control something that is not his. Before she could form another thought, he is at the door, opening it. Her father and Dominic stand waiting in the hall. We are finished, Luca declares. Evelyn will give me her decision by tomorrow evening. The wedding depends on her consent, not yours. That is not. She has... Her father sputters, his face flushing with rage. 24 hours, Mr. Cross. I would advise you to choose your next thoughts with care. Luca's gaze finds Evelyn again. Evelyn, it was a genuine pleasure to meet you. He sounds sincere. She rises on weak legs, the phone a heavy weight in her hand. He saw my condition, crossed the room, and gently retrieved the phone from my hand. His fingers brushed against mine. The contact was momentary, warm, and a complete violation of the moment's context. Keep the card, he said quietly. You will find a use for it. My father's silence on the drive home was a punishment. Only as we passed my mother's fountain and the oaks of my childhood did he finally speak. His face was a mask of fury and desperation. That man is a walking threat, Evelyn. You must understand this. Luca Moretti is no hero from a story. He is a predator. His empire is built on drugs, guns, and blood. People who cross him tend to disappear. I took out my own device and began to type. Perhaps you should not have made deals with murderers. He recoiled. This is for Sarah, for her child, for our family. No, this is for your own cowardice after you gambled with lives that were not yours to lose. Watch yourself. His voice turned to ice. I am still your father, and I still make every decision in this house. Your marriage to Luca Moretti is non-negotiable. I will not sacrifice my daughter and her child to your sudden ethical stand. The car door slammed, a tremor running through the frame as he strode toward the house. In the ringing silence, I watched him go, then pulled out Luca's card. Just a thick, elegant card with a number pressed into it in black ink. No name, title, or allegiance was offered. Only a path. An hour passed before Sarah found me in the garden, perched on a stone bench by Mother's beloved roses. My sister was the very picture of blooming motherhood, glowing skin, a serene expression, a hand cupped over the swell of her belly. She was always the lovely one, the social one, who built friendships and laughed with ease. My trauma drove me inside myself. Hers propelled her outward, her vibrancy a counterweight to my quiet. Hey, she settled carefully beside me. Dad said you had a meeting, something about business. I showed her my phone. He's brokering a marriage contract for me. Sarah's pupils widened. What? Evelyn, who is it? Why? Luca Moretti, to settle his debts. The Moretti Syndicate. Her voice climbed. Oh God, Dad's mixed up with them. How long? A slow shake of my head, a slight shrug. All I had were whispers, pieces of conversations I was never meant to hear, papers I'd glimpsed on his desk, the tension that had been strangling this house for months. Sarah grabbed my hand. You can't do this. Tell Dad no. You have a choice, Evelyn. He can't force you. He says if I refuse, they'll hurt you. And the baby. The blood vanished from her face. He's bluffing, he wouldn't. But the words died, because we both knew what he was capable of. For months, we'd watched our father's desperation grow. This was just his latest, most drastic move. I'll figure something out, Sarah insisted. Ben and I can leave. We can hide where they'll never find us. You don't have to sacrifice. I tightened my grip on her hand, my thumbs flying across the screen. They'll find you. Men like that always do. I won't let you spend your life running, and you'll live in a cage in my place. Perhaps it won't be a cage. The words felt hollow as I typed them, but Luca's promise echoed in my thoughts. Partner, equal, your decision. Sarah watched me for a long time, her face a storm of feelings I couldn't name. Finally, she pulled me into a hug, clumsy with her belly but fierce with love. You've taken care of me ever since Mom died. Who's going to take care of you? I hugged her back, breathing in her vanilla and lavender scent, trying to burn this moment of safety into my memory. When we pulled apart, I held up my phone. Tell me about the baby. What did the doctor say? She let me change the topic. For the next 20 minutes, she talked about nursery colors, baby names, and whether to learn the gender or wait for the surprise. I listened, offered nods and smiles at the right moments, performing normality. But in my pocket, the sharp edge of Luca's card felt like a brand. I waited for the stroke of midnight to make the call. The house was submerged in darkness. Sarah and Ben were asleep in their wing. My father was entombed in his study with his liquor and his mistakes. I stood in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by the ghosts of the girl I used to be, and stared at my phone. 23 hours and 47 minutes since he offered a way out. 13 years since I believed one existed. I drafted the text 3 times before I hit send. This is Evelyn. I need to know what you get out of this deal. Beyond the alliance. His response came in less than a minute. You're blunt. I appreciate that. That's not a good enough answer. No, it isn't. A beat of silence. Then the 3 dots appeared. Can I call you? It's easier to explain over the phone. I hesitated before typing back. I can't talk. That's fine. I'll talk. You listen. Text me if you need to reply. Before I could second-guess myself, the phone was buzzing. I answered, held it to my ear, and held my breath. Evelyn. His voice was different through the speaker, closer with less of an edge. Thank you for reaching out. I wasn't sure you would. I stayed silent. Here's the truth, he began. For 5 years, my family has been trying to go legitimate. We still have business that isn't legal. I won't lie to you about that. But we're changing, cleaning up our books, building a new kind of kingdom. The problem is nobody trusts us. They see it as a power play, just another strategy. He stopped. I heard a soft clink of glass on glass, him pouring a drink. A union with the Cross family. Old money, a flawless name, social approval. It buys us a kind of legitimacy we can't get anywhere else. It opens doors that have always been shut to people like me, no matter how much money we have. Your father needs protection. You need a good name. It's a solid deal on paper, I texted. And what about off the paper? Off the paper, he repeated, his voice slowing. I'm tired of being alone, tired of every relationship being a negotiation for power. I'm tired of people being afraid of me. A short, harsh laugh. Ironic, isn't it? Considering I just bought myself a wife. But watching you today, how they treated you like you were nothing, like your opinion was an obstacle to be handled. His voice faded. I don't want that. If we do this, I need a real partner. Someone who will push back, keep me honest, and remind me why I'm trying to build something good. You think I can be that person? I think you've survived 13 years of a world trying to erase you, and you're still here, still fighting. Yes, I believe you can do anything you set your mind to. I shut my eyes against the fragile feeling rising in my chest, something that felt dangerously like hope. What are the conditions? Smart question. I could almost hear him smiling. First, you won't be a prisoner. You can go where you want. You'll have security, but they are there to protect you, not to guard you. Second, we'll have separate bedrooms unless you decide differently. This marriage doesn't come with any physical obligations, if you understand me. Heat flooded my neck. I typed fast. I understand. Third, you have to be honest with me. If something's wrong, if you're unhappy, if I mess up, I need to know. I'm not a mind reader, and I can't work with silence. He laid out how to reach him, using a dark joke to put her at ease. A flicker of a smile crossed Evelyn's lips before she snuffed it out. His voice then dropped, becoming serious for what was clearly a planned confession. I'm not a good man, Evelyn. He listed his sins, detailing a past of violence and killing. He claimed it was a part of him he couldn't change, a darkness he returned to when his history was provoked. His demand for her to accept this was presented as complete honesty, a trial of her own willingness to be involved. I took it all in. The violence coiled in his hands, the blood on his ledger, and wondered if I could live beside it, become an ally to it, maybe even grow to care for it. My father is a bad man, too. He's just better at hiding it. Yes, Luca agreed softly. He is. I have one more condition. Name it. My sister, she has to be safe no matter what happens. If this deal falls apart, if I leave, if you decide you want me gone, Sarah and the baby are to be untouchable forever. Done! He didn't pause. Anything else? My eyes scanned my room, landing on photos of a smiling girl who loved to sing, a girl who was in school plays and church choirs, a girl who was never quiet. I glanced at the piano in the corner, which hadn't been touched in 13 years. I looked at the life I had given up and the one I was about to choose. When is the ceremony? The following 2 weeks became a dizzying blur of plans made without me. My father hired a planner who swept into the house in a cloud of perfume, armed with fabric samples and floral arrangements. I was fitted for a dress, shown pictures of venues, and given menus for a party I never wanted. Through it all, Luca sent a text every day. Morning, how are you holding up? The planner wants ice sculptures. Thoughts? Your father tried to seat his business partners at the head table. I said no. The seating chart is your call. This is your wedding too. I understand it's a lot. Just remember you can back out any time before we sign the papers. I didn't answer most of them. I didn't know how to act in this strange in-between, where he was my fiancé by deal but not by heart, my future by ink but not by want. Still, I saved every exchange, poring over them in the dead of night when the feeling of being underwater was strongest. Sarah tried 3 more times to change my mind. Her husband, Ben, looked at me with a pity he barely concealed. My father's planning became a manic obsession, a desperate penance paid in exorbitant floral arrangements. All the while I was shrinking, becoming quieter, smaller, fading into the background until Luca showed up at our house without warning. I was in the library, tucked into the window seat with a book I wasn't reading. When I heard the noise from downstairs, raised voices, my father's cutting tone, and then a deeper sound that sliced through the argument with surgical calm. Your convenience is not a factor, Richard. I am here to see my fiancée. She is in no condition for company. The wedding is in 5 days. She is overwhelmed. She needs something other than a gilded cage. Footsteps ascended the staircase. Where is she? I got to my feet as the library door swung open. Luca was there, and for a long moment we simply stood, watching one another. He looked different from how I remembered him. more rugged in dark jeans and a black shirt that exposed the edge of a tattoo at his collarbone. His hair was disheveled, as though he'd run his hands through it repeatedly. My father hovered behind him, radiating pure anxiety. "Hello," Luca said, his entire expression softening as he saw me. "Sorry for the intrusion. I was in the neighborhood." I lifted an eyebrow. We both knew he was lying. His place was clear across the city. "Can we speak?" He shot a pointed glance toward my father. "Now listen here." It wasn't a question. Luca's gaze stayed locked on mine. "Evelyn, may we have a moment alone?" I tilted my head. I watched my father's face harden, saw him prepare to argue, and then think better of it. The door slammed shut behind him. Luca crossed to the window seat, but stayed on his feet. "You haven't answered my texts for 3 days. It made me worry." I pulled out my phone. "I am fine. That is—" His voice was gentle but absolute. "You are not fine. You are set to marry a man you don't know in 5 days. Your father is running this thing like a hostile takeover, and I doubt anyone has bothered to ask what you want. What I want is not a factor. It is a factor to me." He sat down, leaving a deliberate space between us. "Talk to me. What is happening?" I stared at my phone, at the blinking cursor, at emotions too massive, too tangled, too raw to be typed. At last I wrote, "I feel like I am being carefully erased and nobody even sees it." Luca was quiet for a very long time. Then, "I see it." I lifted my eyes to his. "You think I don't notice you?" he continued. "That I'm not paying attention, Evelyn? You are the most visible person in any room you enter. You just don't make noise, so they pretend you are not there. But I see you. The way your mind works when people talk. The way you spot details everyone else misses. The way you handled your sister at dinner last week, giving her water before she even knew she was thirsty." He leaned in closer. "You are not disappearing. Other people are just blind." Something inside my chest cracked open, something that had been frozen solid for years. "I have a proposal," Luca said. "The wedding, we cancel it." I stared at him. "Not our marriage, just the pageant your father has designed. Instead, we go to the courthouse. We sign the papers and we do it simply. After, if you want a party, we can throw one on our own terms, with people we actually choose." I typed fast. "My father will have a complete breakdown." "Let him." Luca's smile was sharp. "He has no say in this. We do. So, what do you decide? Do you want to go to a courthouse on Saturday and skip all of this?" I thought of the dress in my closet chosen for me, the venue I had never visited, the guest list filled with strangers, the entire charade of a wedding meant to prove that Richard Cross's daughter was making a suitable match. Then I thought of Saturday morning, just me, Luca, and an official. Simple, real, mine. Yes. His smile changed the entire landscape of his face. "Are you certain?" I nodded and typed. "But I need Sarah to be there, and we tell my father that morning, so he has no time to interfere. You have a devious streak. I like it." He stood up, holding out his hand. "Come on, let's go for a drive." I paused, then typed, "Where to? Anywhere you want." "When was the last time you left this house?" I had to think back. A week, maybe 2. That is what I thought. He kept his hand outstretched. "You are not a prisoner, are you?" "That was the deal. So let's get you out of this place for a few hours." I looked at his hand, at the calluses and the pale scar, at the choice he was offering me. Then I took it. We drove with the windows down, going nowhere in particular. Luca let me control the stereo. He didn't say a word when I skipped songs in the middle. He just took whatever random exit I pointed at. We ended up at a beach 2 hours north of Boston, almost deserted on a Thursday in early October. I hadn't been near the ocean since before the accident, since before my life split into two. We walked along the edge of the water in silence, the wind nodding my hair while the roar of the surf washed out the noise in my head. Luca stayed close enough to be a solid presence, a comforting anchor. When I finally stopped at the waterline and let the tide rush over my shoes, he came and stood beside me. "Are you all right?" I nodded and got my phone. "Thank you for bringing me here. You do not have to thank me. This is what partners do. We are not married yet. We are close enough." He was silent for a beat. "Can I ask a question?" "Feel free to tell me it is none of my business if I cross a line," I typed. "Ask." "What happened to your voice?" My hands froze over the keyboard. I should have been ready for the question. I should have had an answer prepared, but I had let myself believe he would never ask. I started to type, erased it, and tried again. "A car accident. 13 years ago. My mother was driving. We hit ice and went off the road. She died on impact. I was trapped with broken ribs, a collapsed lung, a crushed larynx. The doctor said it was a miracle I survived." Luca read my words, his face becoming a perfect mask. "A miracle? That is the word they used." "And you screamed," he said softly. "While you were trapped in the wreck, you screamed so hard you tore apart what was left of your vocal cords." I stared at him, my hands shaking so badly I could barely type. "How could you know that?" "Because I have seen that mark of trauma before. That is not just an injury. That is trauma written onto your body." He turned to face me squarely. "I am sorry you lived through that, and I am sorry no one ever gave you another place to put that scream." The tears came before I could stop them. Silent, hot, unstoppable. I tried to wipe them away, but Luca gently caught my hand. "Hey, that is allowed. You are allowed to cry." I shook my head, pulled my hand away, and typed through blurred vision. "I do not cry anymore. Crying is for people who have voices." That is also a lie. He said it with such flat certainty I almost laughed. "Evelyn, look at me." I did. "You have been silent for 13 years. That does not mean you are voiceless. It just means your world failed to listen hard enough." He closed the remaining distance between us. "I am listening. I will always listen. And anyone who doesn't, who writes you off or pretends you aren't there, is going to learn very quickly how wrong they are." My vision cleared, and I saw this man they called a monster, a criminal, a threat, giving me the one thing no one else ever had. "What if I cannot be what you need? What if you already are?" We stood on the sand as the sun went down, bleeding orange and pink across the sky in a way that would have broken my mother's heart. And for the first time in 13 years, I wondered if I could build a new world for myself out of all the broken pieces. Saturday could not come soon enough. Saturday morning dawned with a crisp, clear autumn light that made anything seem possible. Evelyn was awake before sunrise, watching the sky bleed from ink to gold, trying to tell herself she wasn't about to ruin her life. Her phone vibrated. "Morning. Are you still on?" She typed back instantly. "Are you?" "Yes." "I will be there at 9. Wear something that makes you feel good." The thought felt strange, forbidden. She stood in front of her closet for 20 minutes before pulling out a simple cream dress she'd bought herself 2 years ago and never worn. The hem fell just past her knees with a simple elegance. She left her hair down, put on barely any makeup, and studied her reflection as if she were a stranger. The woman in the mirror looked terrified, but she also looked, for the first time in a long time, alive. At 8:30, she knocked on Sarah's door. Her sister opened it, already dressed, with Ben standing right behind her, car keys in his hand. "You're truly going through with this?" Sarah's voice was less a question than a final, fragile confirmation. Evelyn simply nodded, her phone held out like an offering. Then, "You'll want me with you?" Tears welled in Sarah's eyes, yet a smile broke through. "Of course, someone has to make sure you don't bolt. I won't run, I know." Sarah's embrace was careful, mindful of the life Evelyn carried. "You are the strongest soul I have ever known." Of course, Evelyn felt nothing close to brave. She was suspended in a state of sheer terror, teetering on a cliff's edge with no view of the ground below. She anchored herself to her sister, Sarah, trying to breathe in the other's apparent calm. At 8:50, a sound rippled up from downstairs, her father's voice, a familiar harbinger of storms, announcing the planner's arrival. She was meant to be confirming the last details for Wednesday, for a ceremony that was a ghost in her mind, a future she would never inhabit. Evelyn glanced at her phone. A text confirmed her escape was waiting. A treacherous pulse hammered against her ribs. She gathered her things, gave the signal to her sister, and moved towards the stairs, only to find her father, Richard, blocking the way. "And where are you headed?" His question was an immediate interrogation. He began listing her appointments, weaving a verbal cage to keep her in place. Her sister cut him off, her voice a firm shield. "She is going out." Richard's gaze narrowed with suspicion, demanding to know where. Ben, Sarah's husband, stepped in, his words a quiet reinforcement, reminding his patriarch that the event was in 4 days and she was a grown woman. Richard waved this away, citing the pressure of time. Then the chime of the doorbell sliced through the tension. Evelyn slipped past her father before his hands could close on her arm, her own hands shaking as she turned the knob. Luca stood there, his dark suit a tailored piece of armor projecting both power and allure. He held a small bouquet of white roses, a classic, almost weaponized gesture of courtship. His greeting was for Evelyn alone, his focus absolute. Only then did he acknowledge Richard, whose reply was a strained, "What business do you have here?" He invoked some old superstition about seeing the bride. Luca then seized control of the scene, crossing the threshold uninvited as 2 guards took up positions outside, their allegiance a chilling unknown. "The plans have changed," Luca declared, and the words seemed to turn Richard to stone. "Evelyn and I are marrying today, at the courthouse." He presented it as their joint decision, a way to escape the coming circus. The roses passed to Evelyn, their petals cool against her numb, dissociating fingers. Luca then offered Richard an invitation, one that depended entirely on Evelyn's consent. A heavy silence fell. The color drained from Richard's face before returning as a dark, mottled flush of narcissistic injury. His outrage was not for his daughter, but for sunk costs and appearances, for a $200,000 spectacle now lost. Luca's reply was smooth as silk but lined with steel, dismissing it as Richard's problem. "This," he stated, "is what Evelyn wants." Luca let an unspoken threat hang in the air, a suggestion that Richard accept this new reality or face a far more public humiliation. Defeated, Richard turned his focus back to Evelyn, his words twisting into weapons of social shame and public ruin. one last attempt to regain his hold. Evelyn looked at her father, the man who'd planned a wedding in 2 weeks without her, who treated her as an asset to be leveraged. She raised her phone, her silent sword, and showed him the screen. She cared nothing for public opinion. For the first time, she was choosing herself. This was her moment of claiming her own life. Richard immediately labeled her choice a sickness. "He's gotten into your head," he hissed, pointing a trembling finger. Luca's voice cut through the poison, sharp and final, warning him that his next words would shatter the last remnants of civility. The tirade died in Richard's throat. "Your daughter made her decision," Luca said, his voice level. "You can honor it, or you can stay here." He gave her 5 minutes. Sarah and Ben moved to flank her, a human wall declaring they would serve as her witnesses. All the fight drained from Richard, replaced by the stark white of panic. The true conflict spilled out. The Valentino family had been promised a grand society wedding as part of the deal. Luca countered that the Valentinos would get what was legally required, a marriage. The how, he made clear, belonged to him and Evelyn alone. He then offered Evelyn his arm, a formal, solid gesture of alliance. She paused, her gaze falling to the roses, then to her sister's encouraging face before she took his arm. It was a transfer of allegiance, a silent vow. They walked past her father and the planner, who clutched a binder of now useless plans. Moving out of the house where she had slowly suffocated for 13 years. When they reached Luca's car, he opened the door for her, a small act of deference. He asked softly how she was feeling. She answered with her phone, typing, "Ask me after." She was postponing the emotional reckoning. The drive to the courthouse was 40 minutes long. Luca drove with one hand, his other resting on the center console near hers, a quiet offer of support. The small convoy consisted of her sister's car behind them and a security SUV. As they merged onto the highway, Luca reminded her she could still say no at any time. Evelyn confirmed she understood. Then she typed a clarification, a truth that shifted the very ground beneath them. "This isn't about the debt anymore." The message made Luca's jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. He confessed he was a man of action, not of words, that emotions were not his language. He made it clear he was here by choice, not coercion, and he needed to know she understood. She typed, "I get you." Seemingly satisfied, he then admitted he would fail her in this marriage and asked only that she hold him to account when he made his inevitable mistakes. When she asked why he expected to fail, he spoke of a life without partnership, a stranger to compromise, of an isolation that had built formidable walls around him. She thought of her own fortress, constructed of silence and survival, and what it would mean to let someone inside. Her typed reply was a promise. "Then we learn together." He reached over and laced his fingers with hers, a silent pact they held until they arrived. The courthouse was an old marble edifice, radiating institutional weight. A clerk pointed them to the 3rd floor, to a Judge Patricia Morrison, who handled their papers with practiced disinterest. "Are there any objections to this union?" the judge asked, the words a rote formality. Sarah and Ben shook their heads. Evelyn was silent. Luca's voice was firm. "No, Your Honor." He then produced a box holding 2 simple, elegant platinum bands. He had gotten her ring size exactly right. "These work?" he asked, his eyes holding hers, offering one last exit. She gave a small nod and took the smaller of the 2 rings. At Luca's earlier request, Judge Morrison recited a stark, contractual version of the vows. "Do you, Luca Moretti, take Evelyn Cross?" His reply was a steady, "I do." And do you, Evelyn Cross, take Luca Moretti? With hands that trembled, Evelyn held her phone up for the judge to see. On the screen were 3 words. I do. For a brief moment, a genuine smile touched Judge Morrison's lips. Close enough for me, she declared, before pronouncing them legally married and suggesting without command that a kiss was customary. Luca simply raised an eyebrow, leaving the choice to her. Evelyn leaned in and placed a brief, chaste kiss on his cheek. His hand came up to cup her face as he murmured, "Thank you for choosing me." In the background, Sarah was crying softly, a sound that underscored the moment's gravity. Evelyn felt a strange shift inside her own chest, something she could only describe as the first tremor of freedom. They signed the legal papers, sealing their new reality as Mr. and Mrs. Moretti. In the corridor, Sarah hugged Evelyn fiercely. "You did it," she whispered. Ben shook Luca's hand with a surprising warmth, asking what came next. Luca's answer was simple. "We go home." The word home felt foreign on her tongue. The house she had left behind after 26 years had been a place of survival, never a home. She began to consider that home was not a place you were given, but a place you could build. The car ride took them to a part of the city she didn't recognize. They pulled up to a modern high-rise in the Seaport district. Luca explained he had purchased and redesigned the entire penthouse floor 3 years ago. He listed its qualities as if they were tactical advantages: space, privacy, and security. He then moved to dismantle any anxiety she might have, assuring her she would have her own private rooms. "This isn't about me pushing expectations." The elevator doors slid open directly into the residence, a breathtaking expanse of clean lines, soft light, and sweeping harbor views. The space was a reflection of him. Controlled power. The furnishings were minimal but expensive, the art chosen with precision. It was an environment built for a man who valued substance over spectacle. Luca began to map out the territory. Kitchens there, he gestured. Offices down that hall. Your wing is this way. He led her through the main living area to a section of the home she knew was meant only for her. He revealed a bedroom twice the size of her last, a minimalist space of cool grays and stark whites, framed by a wall of glass that met the sea. "I took a guess at what you might like," he offered, a rehearsed unease in his voice. "If I got it wrong, we can change anything. The colors, the furniture, all of it." Drawn to the window, Evelyn watched the life of the harbor unfold against the infinite ocean. Her phone lit up with her response. "It's perfect!" Relief flickered across his face. He came to stand at her side, hands pushed deep into his pockets. An unspoken quiet settled between them. "Are you hungry? We can have something sent over, or feel free to use the kitchens." She turned from the view, her movement silencing his stilted words. Here, in his own domain, the armor he wore seemed to fall away, revealing someone more vulnerable. "Are you nervous?" "Terrified," he admitted, the word hanging in the air. "I just bound myself to a woman I barely know. I brought her into my house. I pledged a partnership I don't even understand." His hand went to the back of his neck, rubbing the tension there. "So yes, I'm nervous," he finished. "I am too." The admission was oddly reassuring. The ghost of a smile touched her lips as she typed, "What happens now?" "Now," he considered. "Now we figure it out. We take it one day at a time. You could settle in. I had some of your things brought over. I hope that's all right. We'll eat, we can talk, or we can just be quiet." "Whatever feels right," he said, his eyes finding hers. "There's no rule book for this, Evelyn. We're making it up as we go. That sounds terrifying. Yes, it does. A grin broke through his anxiety. But it is also a little exciting, don't you think? Before she could reply, his phone buzzed. A single look at the screen wiped the warmth from his face, leaving behind a cold, dangerous mask. "What's happened?" Sarah asked from the doorway. She and Ben stood adrift the living room, unsure if they should stay or leave. "Your father is demanding an emergency summit with the Valentinos," Luca announced, his gaze locked on his screen. "He's trying to nullify the marriage, claiming you were forced." A cold shock jolted through Evelyn's body, sharp and electric. Her hand shot out, grabbing Luca's arm as her fingers flew across her phone's screen. "Can he do that? He can try." A muscle in Luca's jaw clenched. "But he won't succeed. We have witnesses, paperwork, and leverage he knows nothing about." "What leverage?" Ben asked. Luca's eyes shifted to Evelyn. "How much do you know about what your father does for a living?" She gave a vague shrug, typing, "Almost nothing. He kept me away from all that." "Yes, I'm sure he did." Luca pocketed his phone. "Here's the cold, hard truth. Your father didn't just borrow money from the Valentinos. For the last 3 years, he's been washing their cash through his property business." Then the feds started sniffing around, and he panicked and tried to cut ties. "And that's why they want their pound of flesh." Sarah's hand shot to her mouth. "Dad's a criminal." "Your dad's desperate," Luca corrected, "and an idiot. The Valentinos aren't the forgiving type. They only agreed to this marriage because of my family's influence. But if Richard thinks he can change the deal now," Evelyn typed, "they'll kill him." "And Sarah, probably," Luca added, his voice completely level, emotionless. "Which is why we shut this down before it gets worse." "How?" Ben pressed. Luca pulled out his phone again, dialing. "Marco, get me the Richard Cross files, the full package from our guy at the bureau. Yes, the entire thing." A brief pause. "No, I want hard copies." "Bring them to the Valentino meeting tonight." Another silence. "Because I'm giving Richard Cross 2 options. He accepts this marriage and walks away clean, or he fights it and watches me burn his whole world to the ground." He hung up, facing them. "I'm sorry. This isn't how I wanted your first day here to go." Evelyn grabbed his arm, yanking him around to face her phone. "You're blackmailing my father." "I'm protecting my wife," he said, as if it were the simplest truth in the world. "Your father made his bed. Now he has to lie in it. But I won't let him drag you into the grave with him." "What if he says I was forced?" "Then I leak proof that he's a money launderer about to be indicted by the federal government, and I'll make damn sure the right people see it." The hardness in Luca's face seemed to melt away. "I know he's your father. I know this is complicated. But you need to understand one thing: I don't make promises I can't keep. If he tries to break this marriage, I will destroy him completely. Not because I want to, but because those are the rules we live by. You come after what's mine, I come back at you 10 times harder." A choked sound escaped Sarah. Ben pulled her tight against his side. Evelyn just stared at Luca, seeing him with a terrifying new clarity. This wasn't the man who offered her options and respected her quiet. This was the predator who built a kingdom on blood and fear. This was the man she was bound to. This was the truth. "I need time to think." "Of course." He stepped back at once, giving her space. "Take all the time you need. I have to handle this meeting. I'll be back by 8, maybe 9. He turned to Sarah. "You and Ben stay here tonight. I'll have rooms made up. There will be guards, but they'll keep their distance." "Luca," Sarah pleaded quietly. "Please don't hurt him. He's still our dad. I won't lay a hand on him." The smile that touched Luca's lips was all sharp angles. "I don't need to. The truth is weapon enough." He was gone in a blur of fine wool and coiled fury, leaving the apartment feeling vast, empty, and strangely vivid. Sarah sank onto the sofa. "What have we gotten into?" Ben sat beside her, his arm a solid comfort. "We can handle this." But Evelyn knew better. She thought she'd understood what marrying Luca meant, that she'd made peace with his violent past and the world he inhabited. But knowing something in your head is a world away from watching him turn that darkness against your own family. Evelyn retreated to the bedroom and locked the door, sinking onto the unfamiliar mattress. Everything felt alien. She stared at her phone's empty screen. Through the window, the sun bled across the harbor in shades of gold and blood, a perfect portrait of the beautiful, brutal life she'd just entered. Then her phone buzzed with a new message. "I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But what I said is still true. I protect what's mine. That means you. Always. Even from your own blood," she typed back before she could stop herself. "What if I don't want to be protected? What if I just want to be free?" The reply came back instantly. "Then I'll spend every day proving you can be both." She didn't answer, just held the phone tight as the last of the sun died, wondering if she'd made a smart choice or the worst mistake of her life. 3 hours passed. Her phone rang, Luca's name glowing on the screen. She picked up. "Hey." He sounded drained. "It's over. Your father agreed to back off. He's releasing a statement saying our trip to the courthouse was a mutual, romantic, spur-of-the-moment decision. He'll quietly kill the other wedding plans, blame it on a change of heart." A beat of silence. "Are you still up?" "Yes," she typed. "Can I come back to the apartment, or do you need more time?" She thought of the man who threatened her father to save her, the one who promised her freedom while building her a gilded cage, this impossible mix of monster and protector. "Come home." "Copy that. I am 10 minutes away. Just a warning, I'm completely drained and probably won't be much fun to be around." "I do not need you to be fun. I need you to be honest." "Honesty I can do." When he walked in 20 minutes later, he looked like he'd aged a decade. His tie was undone, jacket gone, his hair a mess from where he'd raked his hands through it. His keys clattered on the hall table. His gaze found hers from across the room. "Your father is scared," he said, no preamble. "Terrified. The feds have enough to put him away on multiple charges. He was looking at 20 years, minimum. I'm the only thing standing between him and a cell. I made a deal. The proof disappears. He gets to retire, move away, and live his life. But he can never see you or Sarah again." Evelyn raised her phone. "You bought my father's freedom." "I bought your peace," he corrected her. He walked toward her but stopped, leaving a careful space between them. "I told you I wasn't a good man. I don't play fair. I use whatever weapons I have to get what I want. And my objective is for you to never have to be afraid of him again. No, we're partners now." He sank onto the couch, his frame showing a flicker of uncharacteristic vulnerability. "Look, I get it. If you need out, if this is too much, I'll make sure you and Sarah are protected anyway. But you have to understand this. This is my wiring. I am the one who makes the impossible choices and lives with them, so I can't be someone different for you." She sat near him, the space between them charged, their knees nearly grazing. Her thumbs moved across her screen. I don't want someone different. I just need to see the line. Where does protection bleed into control? He studied the words carefully. That's a fair question. The line is you. You tell me when I cross it, and I will stop. No argument, no justification. Your word is the line. What if I can't always find the words? What if I dissociate and can't speak? Then we'll make other signals, a text, a sign, a system that works. His gaze was pointed. I am not your father, Evelyn. Subject Luca initiated rapport, professing his motive was understanding the patient's silence, not weaponizing it. The patient, contrary to all prediction, accepted his claim. His surprise was visible. She then began a negotiation demanding complete integration into his criminal enterprise as a core condition. She presented this as a prerequisite for an equal partnership, requiring full access to his operations. After a measured pause, he displayed what appeared to be genuine relief and consented. The deal was struck. Full disclosure would begin the next day, detailing the business, its personnel, and all inherent risks. The patient also insisted on keeping her job as a sign language instructor. She stated she would not become a passive, ornamental wife. He assured her that was not his desire. A handshake was offered by Luca. A physical ached to seal the bargain. The patient felt the hardened proof of his violent history in his grip. She added a final term. He had to permit her to offer him emotional support, to drop the facade of invulnerability. He conceded this would be a great challenge for him. She recognized his difficulty but held the terms firm. His hand tightened on hers, a possessive agreement as he called her by her new title. With her free hand, she signaled her intent to maintain this same pressure. They remained locked in a tableau of negotiated codependence in a room slowly transforming into a domestic space. Outside, the cityscape was a field of a million pinpricks of light, each a separate life unfolding. The other subject, Sarah, appeared, took in their joined hands, and gave a small nod of approval. She confirmed aloud they were settling their conflict. Luca affirmed it, and Sarah came forward, placing a kiss on Evelyn's forehead before she went to bed. She asked them to wake her if needed. Once she was gone, Luca stood, urging Evelyn to her feet, and told her to sleep. She obeyed, moving to her room before she paused. Turning, she saw Luca standing isolated and adrift in his own territory, his hands pushed deep into his pockets. The patient walked back to him, rose on her toes, and gave him a long, measured kiss that spoke of gratitude, terror, and a fragile hope that their pact could work. His reaction was one of dark surprise. When he asked for the reason, she showed him a written message. It was for his integrity, for the way he saw her, and for his difficult honesty. He answered by speaking her name with a tone of reverence and fealty. He voiced his certainty that he would fail her, but promised a daily effort to be worthy of her. She replied that he already was. She then retreated to her room, the sound of the lock clicking shut, and finally allowed herself to feel the psychological crush of her recent choices and new identity. She had allied herself with a sociopathic entity, a killer who had trapped her family and wrecked her prior life, only to offer a new one defined by violence and control. In a paradox, she started to feel a strange sense of rightness. A final message came from him, acknowledging her compliance. She echoed the marital term, crediting him with preventing her flight. The initial week of their pact was a dizzying mix of domestic normalcy and immersion in his criminal sphere. Luca kept his promise of transparency, requiring her to observe high-stakes financial dealings and to learn the catalog of his associates, separating legal fronts from the truly illicit enterprises. Showing her a digital photo of an associate named Marco, Luca gave a clinical profile over breakfast that Wednesday. He defined Marco as a subordinate of 2 decades with a pathological loyalty that required Luca's own careful management. Evelyn studied the image of a powerfully built male with kind eyes and hands shaped by violence. She asked if this associate was aware of her. Luca verified that her existence was known throughout the organization. He performed a simple domestic act, pouring her more coffee, a pattern he learned from her 3-cup-a-day habit. He explained she was a matter of intense debate, as their unsanctioned bond violated syndicate politics, inspiring either admiration or offense. She asked which of the 2 reactions he wanted. He feigned neutrality, claiming his only goal was to shield her from the syndicate's games. By Thursday, however, it became clear this goal had failed. The first threat was delivered by text to Luca's phone over dinner. His features became a placid mask as he excused himself to make a call. Through the glass walls of his office, Evelyn saw his posture shift from that of a businessman to something more predatory. He came back 20 minutes later, his jaw a rigid line of tension. Sarah asked about the problem, as her and Ben's long stay was justified by the superior security of Luca's home. Luca waved it off as a matter being handled. He shared that an associate had made a crude comment about Evelyn, painting her as a strategic risk. Ben asked for the man's name. Luca denied him, saying the issue had been corrected. The euphemistic chill of the word was not lost on Evelyn. She used her device to demand he be clear. Luca met her eyes and said he had made it understood that any threat, insult, or undermining of her position would be met with a personal response from him. He confirmed this warning had been sent network-wide. When she pressed him on his methods, his silence was an answer. He admitted he had reminded them of his capacity for violence when his lines are crossed. Sarah's fork hit her plate with a clatter, a physical reaction to the tension. Ben seemed to swallow his own questions. Evelyn felt the full, suffocating weight of her decision. She had agreed to a world where protection was delivered through brutality. She typed slowly, asking if he had taken a life. The denial was instant. Luca did, however, admit to causing a non-lethal but grievous injury for which he had no regret, saying it was earned. When pressed for the specific insult, he dismissed it as unworthy of being repeated. The patient then withdrew, fleeing to her bedroom before the shaking could start. A soft knock. Luca's voice, carefully controlled, asking to come in. She said nothing, giving her permission through silence. He entered with caution, the way one would approach a wounded animal. He kept a deliberate distance, taking a chair, and asked her to describe her mental state. Her long typed answer revealed that knowing about his violence conceptually was jarringly different from its practical application. She conveyed her confusion about being the reason for such an act. He corrected her at once, placing the blame squarely on the other man's disrespect. He moved closer, his body language one of sheer focus. He acknowledged that her situation was unique and the psychological strain he was putting on her was extreme. When asked if this violent response was his new default, he answered with clinical truthfulness. It would depend entirely on the status of the offender. A civilian would be ignored. A member of his syndicate would likely face a similar outcome. In his world, he said, respect was a functional currency. Letting her be slighted would be a broadcast of his own weakness and his failure to protect his assets. She typed that she was a political instrument. He corrected her sharply. She was his wife. All other things were secondary, he stated. The patient fought against this logic, as the justification of cruelty, as a form of care, echoed the manipulative rhetoric of her father, a man skilled at painting his selfish needs as sacrifices. "How can I know you're not just like him?" she wrote. The comparison seemed to freeze Luca in place. His voice was quiet when he answered. "Like who?" The patient named her father, accusing Luca of merely wielding a different kind of control. He moved to the window and looked out, the long silence indicating a carefully weighed response was coming. He turned back, admitting that she couldn't be sure of his motives. Not yet. Real proof, he said, would come only with time, by watching the choices he made, especially those that cost him personally to protect her autonomy. He then made his counter-argument, drawing a stark line between his actions and her father's. Her father saw her silence as a weakness to be weaponized. He professed to see it as a language to be learned. Her father used her love for Sarah as a bargaining chip. He insisted he guarded Sarah as a promise kept. One wedding was a public display. This was a true commitment. She typed that this too felt like a strategy. He did not deny it. He acknowledged that manipulation was a skill he had perfected to survive. But he countered that if he merely wanted a puppet, he would use far cruder tactics: total isolation, constant surveillance, and complete emotional dependency. He was, however, providing the exact opposite: freedom, knowledge, and agency. He was proving his desire for a partner, not a possession. Her eyes fell to her phone, the conduit for their silent negotiation. She absorbed the truth that he had never once tried to seize it, sever her connections, or demand her compliance, but was instead choosing to reason with her. "I need time to absorb this." His response was immediate: "Take all you need." He moved to the door but stopped, his silhouette framed in the doorway. "If it means anything, I am absorbing this too. It is a new thing for me to explain myself, to justify what I do to another person. The feeling is raw, but I do it because you have a right to understand the world you now live in." After he was gone, Evelyn sat with her thoughts, her device, and the crushing architecture of her marriage. At last she messaged Sarah, "Am I crazy for staying?" Sarah's text came back instantly. "I can't say. Maybe. But I have seen how he watches you, like you are something priceless he is terrified to break. Father never looked at anyone that way." "He could still break me." Sarah wrote back, "No, but it means he would be destroyed if he did." Evelyn wasn't sure if that was a comfort or a terror. That night, at around 10 o'clock, Luca came to her door. When she opened it, he was holding a thick dossier. "This is everyone I do business with," he said. "Their face, their purpose, and their capacity for violence. I need you to memorize them, to learn who to trust and who to fear, to know the faces of those who would try to use you against me." He gave her the folder and a second phone, a model sleeker and more severe than anything sold in stores. "The red icon is a panic button. Press it, and my security team will be on you in under 3 minutes. The GPS is always active, always monitored. If something happens, if you are ever in danger, this phone will bring me to you." She took them, feeling their combined weight in her hands. "You're expecting something to happen," he replied. "I expect that men become volatile when power shifts, and our marriage has shifted everything." He rubbed the back of his neck. "My goal isn't to scare you, it's to prepare you. There is a difference. Is there?" "Yes. To scare you, I would keep you ignorant to keep you close. To prepare you is to trust that you can handle the truth and make the right call." He met her eyes directly. "I trust you, Evelyn. Despite everything, despite every reason you have not to trust me, I am putting my life in your hands by bringing you into this." Something shifted in her chest. Attention breaking, she held up her personal phone. "Show me how the panic button works." He did, taking her through every function, having her practice arming and disarming it while he explained the protocol. He then sat on the floor of her bedroom as she studied the file, answering her texted questions with quiet, unending patience. That's Vincent Calibri, he said as her finger rested on a photo. He runs the North Side. He's old guard, a traditionalist, and he won't trust anyone under 40. He voted against our marriage because he thinks I'm too young, but the man has a code. He won't approach you. And him, she pointed to a gaunt man with frozen eyes. Tommy Ricci, an enforcer. He takes the jobs that others won't. His allegiance is to the highest bidder, not to a family. He is a threat if pointed at you, but the Valentinos hold his contract, and the marriage holds them in check. He is a managed risk. They continued through 30 more files, a gallery of photographed faces that were friendly, indifferent, or openly predatory. By midnight, the faces had begun to swim together in Evelyn's mind. That's enough for one night, Luca said, getting to his feet. You'll be meeting most of them on Saturday. Her eyes snapped up to his. Saturday? The charity gala. It's been planned for months. All the families will be there. It's the stage where we pretend to be civilized, legitimate businessmen instead of killers in $1,000 suits. He read the alarm on her face. I know the timing is fast, but hiding you is a liability for both of us. They need to see that you are real, that this marriage is real, and that my protection of you is absolute. I don't know how to be in a room like that. Fortunately, neither do half the people who will be there. They're just better at the performance. A small smile touched his lips. I will be at your side the entire night. You don't have to speak. Your presence is your statement. Let them look. That is all they need. What if it's not enough? What if someone... Then I will handle it. It is that simple. It's done. Evelyn, look at me. She did. Saturday is going to be uncomfortable, probably scary, definitely overwhelming. But you're not alone. Marco will be there. 3 security men, and me. If you want to leave at any time, for any reason, we leave. Instantly. Your peace of mind is more important than any business. She wanted to argue, to say she could endure it, to prove she belonged in his world. The truth was, she was deeply afraid. She picked up her phone. What do I wear? His expression softened. Pick whatever makes you feel the most powerful. The next morning, a stylist appeared with rolling racks of gowns, all perfectly sized, beautiful, expensive, and completely intimidating. Sarah, 7 days from giving birth and claiming to move like a shipwreck, oversaw the process with the sheer joy of someone living vicariously through her sister's new, dangerous glamour. That one? Sarah pointed, indicating a deep emerald gown that moved like liquid silk. Try that one. Evelyn obeyed. The dress fit like it was made for her, revealing a strength she usually kept hidden, creating a figure of untouchable elegance. Perfect, the stylist whispered. The very picture of Mrs. Moretti. The name still felt foreign, a role she was playing in another person's life. But when Luca came home and saw her standing in the living room wearing the dress, the look on his face sent a slow, blooming warmth through her chest. Wow, he said, then immediately tried to correct himself. What I mean is you look, that is... He stopped, then tried again. You are going to be the most beautiful woman there, she typed back quickly. You are biased. Completely. That doesn't make the statement any less true. Sarah laughed from the couch. You two are disgustingly sweet. It's an insult to those of us married for years who only fight about who takes out the recycling. We fight too, Luca said, just about other things. Fighting implies both people can talk, Sarah observed. Rest assured, Luca said, his eyes on Evelyn with something that looked like devotion. She makes her arguments very clearly. That night, Evelyn dreamed she was at the gala. She was in a room of ghosts who knew her husband's crimes, her father's sins, and her own silence. They stared, judging her by rules she didn't know, and she failed some unspoken test, causing Luca's entire world to shatter. She woke at 3 a.m., heart racing, and found Luca in the living room, working on his laptop in the dark. He looked up as she approached. "Can't sleep?" She shook her head. "Me neither. Come here." He motioned to the seat beside him. When she sat, he angled the screen so she could see. "I'm looking at some downtown properties, thinking of starting a community center. Something that gives back. To build this city instead of just taking from it." She leaned closer, looking over the blueprints. She typed, "Why?" "Because you asked how you would know I'm not your father. This is how your father took things. I want to build things. He pretended to be a good man while doing bad things. I want to become a good man by doing good things." He closed the laptop. "And because you make me want to be better, which is infuriating and exhausting and probably the best thing that has ever happened to me. I didn't ask you to change. No, you asked for the truth. And the truth is, I was getting tired of being the man I was." For the first time in years, he was a reason to risk something new. In the city's low glow, she traced the exhaustion etched around his eyes, the shadow of a beard on his jaw, the unkempt fall of his hair. He looked real, breakable. Her fingers found his, resting on the cold surface of the laptop. His eyes dropped to their joined hands before meeting hers again. "Saturday, you will be magnificent," he murmured. "More than magnificent. You will walk in there and show them all why I chose you." How could he be so sure? "Because I have watched you walk through hell with grace." A room full of judging killers was nothing against 13 years of muteness. She wanted to believe him, to borrow his certainty. Instead, she just held his hand, watching the city dissolve into a blur of light. Saturday arrived, sharp and unforgiving. A crew descended, shaping her hair, face, and nails with detached precision. Sarah watched from a nearby chair, a constant source of praise. "You look like a movie star," she declared once they were done. "Like one of those silent film sirens." They didn't need words, their eyes said it all. Evelyn managed to smile, a mask for the dread coiling in her gut. The dress was too much, the heels too high, the makeup a painted mask. The woman in the mirror was a stranger playing a part. At 6, Luca arrived in a tuxedo worth more than most cars, radiating a lethal confidence. "Ready?" he asked. She nodded, a lie her rigid posture exposed. Luca saw her fear, giving her one last chance for normalcy. She refused. On her device, she typed that she had to face this, to legitimize her place here. A part of her was becoming what he'd made her. He kissed her then, a performance to seal their pact, a gesture of surrendering control he didn't mean. The downtown hotel breathed old money. They arrived late, a calculated power play. "Let them wait," Luca murmured, explaining the psychology of their entrance. Marco confirmed security was set. With a hand pressed firmly to her back, Luca led her into the lion's den, an exquisite trophy on display. A wave of hushed whispers followed their entrance. An older man, Vincent, approached with practiced congratulations. "My wife," Luca stated simply, a formal introduction that was anything but. Vincent's gaze lingered on her, openly assessing. The mention of her father made her flinch. Luca stepped in, his voice smooth, as he cast a subtle slur on the man's name. A quiet declaration of ownership. Afterward, Luca's fingers pressed harder into her spine, a possessive grip disguised as reassurance. For the next hour, she was a silent doll, as he navigated the circling sharks, speaking for them both. Someone remarked that her silence must be a useful trait. Luca's reply was glacial. "She doesn't waste word, doesn't he said, turning her muteness into a weapon of quiet authority that silenced the challenger. The grand ballroom was a crucible of stairs, and her composure started to crack. Luca sensed her fraying, but then her gaze locked on an impossible sight. Her father, standing across the room. He looked broken, a shadow of the man she knew. Their eyes met, and Richard Cross started toward them, his face a mask of desperation. Luca moved, a wall between them, a cold reminder of their bargain. Luca's voice was low, laced with venom. "You sold her." Richard ignored him, his eyes pleading with Evelyn, trying to reclaim a fatherhood he had long ago abandoned. Her hands trembled, but Evelyn met his gaze and gave a slow, deliberate shake of her head. He crumpled, a broken man, and for a split second, an old, familiar guilt twisted inside her. Then the memory of 13 silent years washed the guilt away. Luca took her arm, turning her to leave, just as the shatter of glass and the crack of gunfire ripped through the ballroom. The world erupted into screaming chaos. Before she could think, Luca threw her to the floor, his body a shield over hers. Marco was beside them, gun drawn, adding to the deafening roar. Her heart hammered against her ribs. The violence suddenly real. "Get her out!" Luca ordered, but she clung to him, a visceral panic seizing her as she furiously shook her head, refusing to leave his side. He froze, torn for a heartbeat before rescinding the order. "With me," he snarled. They moved to a shielded hallway where she couldn't stop shaking, her body racked with violent tremors. The image of him being shot played over and over in her mind, a new kind of terror. It was the Valentinos, his lieutenant guessed, but Luca wasn't so sure. This was meant to break our deal, Luca reasoned. His hand never left her, but something in him shifted, hardening into ice. "They will pay for this," he vowed, his voice pure retribution. 3 escort cars formed a shield for their return. She was frozen, the phantom sound of shattering glass echoing in her ears. Luca watched her, his hand a constant warm pressure on her knee. This time his touch felt like an anchor, not a chain. When they arrived, men swept the house, as Luca kept asking if she was hurt. She tried to steady herself, but the shaking wouldn't stop. "I'm fine," she typed, a lie. His voice cracked as he dismissed it, pacing the room like a caged animal. "This is my fault," he raged. "I am responsible for you, only me." He tore into his own security failures until Marco gave the all clear. The news only fueled Luca's fury. "I want eyes everywhere," he commanded. "This will not happen again, ever." "Nobody in or out," he ordered. "The Valentinos did this." Marco hesitated. "Or someone wants us to think that," he suggested carefully. "Someone who benefits from a war between us." Luca stopped pacing, the strategic gears turning behind his eyes. "The Calabresi," Marco offered. "They'd love to see us tear each other apart." Luca's command was ice. "Find out now. Get me everything and prepare our men to hit them first." After Marco left, the rage on Luca's face crumbled, replaced by a raw vulnerability meant only for her. "You should leave," he said, a test. She shook her head, typing that she had known the risks. The reality of it was different, she admitted, but her choice was the same. "I'm staying," she insisted on the screen. He stared, baffled. Any sane person would run. But all she could see was him shielding her body with his own. That was reason enough. He was capable. He saw her as something precious. The panic in his eyes wasn't just for a broken deal, it was for her. She typed, "You would have died for me tonight." He tried to dismiss it as duty, but she typed the word before she could stop herself. Love. The instant she wrote it, she wished she could take it back. Luca went absolutely still. "Evelyn," he breathed, the sound so raw it made her ache. "I am not good at this. Feelings, words, but tonight, when the shooting started, my only thought was that if they touched you, if I lost you, I would simply stop. And we've only been married 2 weeks. It makes no sense, but you have become the center of my world, and I don't know what to do with that." She closed the distance between them, stepping into his heat until she could feel it on her skin. Then she stood on her toes and kissed him. It wasn't a soft or questioning kiss, but a claim, a raw outpouring of all the words she could not speak. He responded instantly, his arms crushing her to him. It deepened, a collision of her 13 silent years and his lifetime of solitude, all their fears meeting at once. They broke apart, breathing hard, his forehead pressed to hers. "Are you sure?" he rasped. "There's no going back from this, Evelyn. No more separate rooms." She fumbled for her device, one hand gripping his shirt like a lifeline. "I have never been more sure of anything." He kissed her again, this time with the tenderness that stole her breath. Then he swept her into his arms and carried her toward his bedroom. It was a movie scene, she thought distantly, before the thought was lost in the feeling of it. His room was more expansive than hers, commanded by a vast bed and the same floor-to-ceiling windows that marked the estate. He eased her onto the mattress edge, then put a deliberate space between them. "We can stop," he said, his breath catching, his pupils blown wide. "At any time. I need a way for you to say no if you change your mind." She considered this, reaching for her phone on the nightstand and lighting up a screen with a single word. Red. This is the signal, she conveyed, to stop everything. Her nod was firm, a promise of immediate cessation. Yellow means slow down. Green means go, like a traffic light. A fragile smile touched his lips. "I can operate with those rules." "What color are we now?" she answered without pause. "Green." The ensuing encounter was a frantic, clumsy collision, nothing like cinematic fantasies, and was marked by a spike of panic when her phone was briefly lost in the sheets. Yet there was also a profound tenderness in the chaos, felt in the way his fingers traced the scars on her throat and the invisible wounds they represented. He showed patience when she needed to retreat, to find her trust again. The connection they forged was authentic, raw, and formidable. Afterward, tangled in his bed sheets, Evelyn felt an emotional nakedness she had not known in 13 years. The vulnerability was a surrender of power, based on the trust that he would never wield it against her. "Are you all right?" Luca murmured, his fingers tracing circles on her shoulder. She reached for her phone. A state far better than all right. It was the truth. He affirmed it with a soft kiss to her temple. It was. They lay in the quiet stillness, processing the profound shift between them. The calm was shattered by Luca's phone, the message on it turning him to stone. "What is it?" Evelyn sat up, pulling the sheet over herself. Marco found something. His voice had gone hollow, devoid of its earlier warmth. The gunman was not Valentino's. He was hired by a third party, someone who wanted a war between our families. "Who?" "Your father." The words landed with the force of a physical blow. Evelyn stared, certain she had misheard. Her fingers flew across the screen, typing that it was impossible. He would not. He would, and he did. Luca sat up, the distance between them becoming a chasm. "It seems Richard decided that if he could not own you in this marriage, he would simply annihilate it." Start a war, get me killed, and resume control as the grieving father. No, no, that cannot be true. He is my father. He wouldn't kill people just to what? Get his power back? To erase the threat I posed to his public image? Luca rose from the bed, his movements sharp and angry as he dressed. Evelyn, your father is not the man you believe him to be. He is a manipulator who will murder to protect his interests. She felt the urge to argue, to defend the man she remembered, but the facts Luca laid out were irrefutable. It was a truth she had been avoiding for years. Her father had bartered her for his own security, and when that failed, he chose destruction over accepting his loss. She typed through a sudden wash of tears. What are you going to do? Luca paused, his face an unreadable mask. What do you think I am going to do? You intend to kill him? He tried to have you murdered tonight. He hired a man to fire into a crowd simply to ignite a war. So, yes, I am going to kill him. He said it as a simple fact. Unless you tell me to stop. She watched him, her mind struggling to connect the tender man from moments ago with this calm executioner. The choice he presented her with was even more disorienting. If you say no, I will not kill him. I'll find another solution. I will make him disappear, ruin him financially, or destroy his name. But he will live. He crossed his arms. The decision is yours to make, not mine, and you will resent me for it. No, I will respect your choice. There is a difference. He sat on the bed again, keeping the space between them. Evelyn, I know he is your father. I understand the complexities here, but I also know what he is capable of after tonight. If he lives, he remains a threat to you, to Sarah, and to any kind of future for us. She pulled her knees to her chest, trying to process the overwhelming reality. She tried to reconcile the memory of a father with the man who would orchestrate a public shooting. She sought an answer she could live with. Finally, she typed, "What would you do if it was your father?" Luca's laugh was a bitter, broken sound. My father ordered my death when I was 19 because he decided I was too ambitious. I had him buried 3 months later, so my own history is of little help to you. Do you regret it? Every single day. His gaze drifted away, and I would do it again without hesitation. Because some people are poison, Evelyn, and sometimes cutting them out is the only way to survive. She pictured her father's face from earlier that night, the desperation in his eyes, his claims of love, warred with the memory of years spent using her silence as a weapon. Love and poison, she realized, could coexist. She typed deliberately, I will not ask you to kill him, but I will not ask you to spare him either. Do what you feel is necessary for our safety. I am trusting your judgment. That is not fair to you. That is making you an accomplice. I know, but I cannot be the one to pass sentence, nor can I be the one to grant a pardon. Therefore, I am choosing to trust you to make the right call. Luca was silent for a long moment, then gave a single sharp nod of finality. Okay, I will handle it. He stood and finished dressing. I have to make some calls. You should try to sleep. I will be unable to sleep. Yes, me too. He paused at the door. For whatever it is worth, I am sorry. Sorry that this is your life, and sorry your father is this kind of man. Sorry there is no way out of this without pain. She wanted to reply, but knew no words could bridge the gap between their intimacy and the violence he was now arranging. He departed, leaving her with the cold knowledge that her father would be dead by sunrise. She did not sleep. Instead, she dressed and went to the living room, where Luca was pacing, while speaking rapid Italian on his phone, and sat on the sofa to wait. He looked at her, surprised, but did not stop his conversation. He simply pulled her to his side, keeping her anchored to him while he managed his dark affairs. At around 3 a.m., his calls concluded. He rubbed his face. "It is finished," he said quietly. "He is gone. It will look like a suicide. Evidence of his part in the shooting will be found tomorrow. The official story will be that he could not live with what he did." Evelyn felt no emotional response. That void was more terrifying to her than grief would have been. A person should feel something at their father's death, but she felt only a hollow space. How do I know I will not become like this? Numb and desensitized. Luca drew her closer. "Because you are asking the question, because you are aware of what this world does to a person. That awareness is a form of protection. The ones who become empty are those who stop seeing it happen. You are not there, not even close. How can you be so certain? Because you just consented to your father's death and you are immediately questioning if you are a monster. A real monster lacks the capacity to ask." She leaned against him, letting him hold her as she absorbed the facts of her new existence. Her father was dead by her husband's order, an act she did not prevent. "I'm sorry," Luca said softly. "I know it is not enough, but I am." She used her phone. "Do not be sorry for protecting us. Be sorry that it was required." "Yes, I am sorry for the state of the world and that your father could not let you be happy." Was his theory about manipulation correct? No. Luca turned to face her. "You made your own choices. I gave you options, and you selected what felt right. That is not manipulation, that is autonomy. Then explain why I feel like I am disappearing as you change my world. That is not you being lost. It is the real you emerging, free from your old burdens." She desperately wanted to believe him, to trust that the numbness was temporary, that grief would come and that she was still whole. Yet, in the quiet before dawn, as the reality of her father's death settled over her, all certainty evaporated. Luca's phone vibrated again. He checked it, his expression hardening. Another issue. What is it? "Sarah is in labor. Ben's message says they are on the way to the hospital." The information cut sharply through her dissociation. A death and a birth in the same night. Her father's life ending as a new one began. The cruelty of the timing was profound. "We have to go. Are you sure? If you need to be alone." She rose, cutting off his concern. She typed with resolve. "My sister needs me. Let's go." The ride to the medical center was a disoriented haze. Luca's hand stayed on her, his thumb drawing slow circles, a physical anchor against the tide of her own dark thoughts. A second car trailed them, with Marco and another man inside, a reminder that even new life required armed protection. They found Ben in the lounge, a caged animal pacing, his hair a mess of frantic energy and his eyes wide with fear. 4 hours she's been in labor, he said, his voice sharp. They say it's normal, but the pain... I can do nothing. His gaze then fell on Evelyn. What happened? You both look like you've seen a ghost? It's a long story, Luca said. I'll tell you later. Where is she? Room 304, family only. Then I am family, Luca stated, guiding Evelyn toward the elevators. Ben followed, his nervous stream of words about contractions and pain bleaching the color from Luca's face. In the room, Sarah was a portrait of agony, her knuckles white as she gripped the bed's metal frame. But seeing Evelyn, her concern shifted from her own body to her sister. What is it? She breathed out. You look... Did something else happen? Evelyn glanced at Luca, a silent question in her eyes. He gave a slight, permissive nod. She took out her phone, her fingers moving with stark precision. Father is gone. He took his own life. We'll talk after. You and the baby are all that matters now." Sarah's eyes widened, then filled. "Oh, God, Evelyn!" A contraction stole the rest of her words, arching her body in pain. The next 6 hours were a strange fever dream, blending crisis with clinical routine. Evelyn was a calm, steady presence for her sister. Luca stood watch from a corner, a steady intense discomfort and unwavering duty. Ben oscillated between terror and joy. Into this charged room, a nurse announced the police were there to question Evelyn. "That isn't happening now." Luca's voice was utterly flat. "She is with her sister. They can wait." "Sir, it's a death investigation. I said," Luca repeated, "that they will wait." The finality in his tone left no room for argument. The nurse retreated. At 2:47 p.m., Sarah gave birth to a daughter, 7 pounds, 3 ounces, with a shock of dark hair and a formidable cry. They named her Emma Catherine. When the nurse placed the infant in Evelyn's arms, a wall she had maintained since her trauma finally shattered. This tiny, perfect creature, unaware of the sins of her grandfather and born into a complicated world, held an innocence that Evelyn felt a fierce, primal need to defend. Her eyes found Luca's. He was watching her, and the steel was gone, replaced by a look of profound softness and awe. "She is beautiful," he whispered, "and so is her aunt." From the bed, a spent but glowing Sarah smiled. "You two should have one. They'd be gorgeous." "Sarah," Ben gently scolded with a laugh, "let them breathe. They've only been married 2 weeks, I'm just saying. Look at how he watches her holding Emma. The man is a natural father." A faint heat rose in Luca's ears, but he didn't deny it. His gaze locked with Evelyn's, holding a question that needed no words. Later, once mother and child were asleep, they stood on a balcony watching the sun bleed across the sky. Awake for more than 30 hours, she was adrift in the new reality of her father's death and her own changed life. Holding her niece had been both a solace and a new source of pain. "You were a natural," Luca remarked. "I've always wanted children," she typed back, "but I never thought it was possible for me." "Why not? What man would want a wife who cannot speak with a past like mine?" "I did," he said, his voice leaving no room for doubt. "Past included. Our marriage was a means to an end. I married you because you were the first person in a decade who made me want to be a better man. The politics were a convenient excuse." He turned to face her fully. "Evelyn, I know today has been a nightmare. You're dealing with the unthinkable, but I need to say this." She waited. "Seeing you with Emma, it solidified a truth in me. I want that with you. Not now, only when you are ready, if you are ever ready. But I want it. I want to build a real family with you. A messy, loving one, not the cold transaction I was raised in." Her eyes burned. The screen of her phone blurred as she wrote, "My father is dead. You killed him and I let you." "What kind of foundation is that?" "The same as any other," he answered. "Built one choice at a time, one day at a time. We make mistakes, we fix them, and we try to be better than those who came before us." He cupped her face with his hands. "Your father made his choices. They don't have to be our story. We write our own. What if I'm too broken to choose right? Then we will be broken together. That is what a partnership is for." She leaned into his hold, allowing the embrace on a public street as the world moved on. Oblivious, the idea flickered within her that maybe she could survive this, that something good could grow from the wreckage, that she could move forward instead of being frozen in the past. "It's time," Luca said softly. "You need to go home. You need to sleep." So do you, she typed. Yes, he agreed, but I can't rest until I know you are safe. They drove back in the growing dark, too exhausted for words. Inside the penthouse, she walked past her own room and went straight to Luca's, climbing into his bed, still dressed in clothes from another lifetime. He entered behind her without a word, pulled her against him, and they lay in the darkness, listening only to the sound of each other's breathing. I love you, Luca said into the silence. I know the timing is terrible. I know everything is a mess. But it's the truth, and I want you to know it. Half asleep, she reached for her phone on the nightstand, typed 3 words, and showed him the screen. I love you too. His arms tightened around her. Understood. She nodded against his chest, and for the first time since it happened, an emotion that wasn't fear, numbness, or grief took root. It was hope. The police could wait until morning. The fallout from her father's downfall could wait. The work of building a future would start tomorrow. For tonight she was safe in the arms of a man who had killed for her and would do so again. A man who gave her a choice when everyone else had taken it away, and who treated her silence as sacred, not as an opportunity. For now, it was enough. The grief she'd held at bay ambushed her 3 days later in the middle of a routine police interview. Evelyn sat in a sterile conference room, Luca and his lawyer on either side, while a tired detective asked about her father's state of mind before he died. Her typed replies were short and detached. Then the detective slid a photo across the table. Her father, years ago at a charity event, smiling. This was him before the ruin, before the darkness, when he was just her dad. A silent, violent sob ripped through her. Her hand flew to her mouth to stifle a sound that wouldn't come. 13 years of silence had erased the memory of how to cry quietly. Her whole body shook with soundless tears. Luca's arm was around her in an instant. We're done here, he said, his voice like iron. My wife just buried her father. You want more? Make another appointment. Mr. Moretti, we need to... I said we are done. He stood, pulling Evelyn up with him, holding her steady. Any further communication goes through our lawyer. They made it to the car before she completely fell apart. In the cold concrete of the parking garage, Luca just held her as she wept, her body racked with silent, agonizing spasms. She cried for the man who was her hero, her seller, and her monster. The grief was ugly and complicated, nothing like the clean sorrow of movies. It was rage mixed with loss, freedom tangled with guilt, and the bitter knowledge that the dead can never apologize. So closure is a lie. I've got you, Luca murmured, rubbing circles on her back. Let it out. Let it all out. The storm passed after 20 minutes, leaving her utterly empty. When she pulled away, his shirt was soaked and she felt a profound weakness, a fragility she hadn't known since the attack. With shaking hands, she found her phone. I didn't know it would hurt this much. He was your father. Of course it hurts, but he tried to kill me, and you. Why do I still miss him? Because love isn't logical, he said. You can hate what a person did and still love who they once were. The two things can be true at once. She leaned against the car, staring up at the concrete ceiling. How long until this stops hurting? I don't know. Years, maybe, or maybe it never really stops. You just get stronger at carrying it. He stood beside her, a solid presence. My own father has been dead for 8 years. I still dream about him sometimes. Sometimes I still wish things had been different. Do you regret killing him? I regret that it became necessary, he said. The two things aren't the same. And now she understood. the difference between regretting an action and regretting the world that made it the only choice. Her father's death wasn't what she wanted, but it was the one thing that guaranteed Sarah's safety, her own life, and a future beyond his twisted control. The agony remained, a beast merely caged, not slain. Silence shrouded their return. In the lobby, Marco's face was a mask of grim news, coiling tension in Luca's gut. "What is it?" he demanded. "A summons from the Valentinos for tomorrow. They disavow the attack, claiming proof Richard Cross was a rogue actor, which is the truth," Luca affirmed. "Yes, but they also declare the marriage pact void because you executed her father without their permission. They're calling it a violation of their terms." Luca's laugh was a brittle, mirthless sound. As expected, never let a tragedy go to waste. He glanced at Evelyn. "Are you ready for this, or do you need time to recover?" She raised her phone. "I am ready. What is one more trauma?" "That is my girl." He pressed his lips to her temple before facing Marco again. "Set it up. Neutral ground. I want fortress-level security. And have our dossier on Richard's betrayal prepared for presentation." The summit was arranged for the next evening at a North End restaurant on Valentino turf. The day was a crucible of preparation as Luca honed his strategy with Marco and their lawyers, summoning favors from allies who could sway the outcome. Evelyn watched him work, saw the cold arithmetic of his world, and knew she was witnessing a king moving his pieces. "You're staring," he said, his eyes fixed on his laptop. Her fingers flew across the screen. "I am studying." "You said I could. A fair point. And what is your lesson so far? That you are more dangerous at a table than you are with a gun." His smile was rare and genuine. "The kindest thing I have heard all week." That evening, she armored herself in a severe black suit Sarah had sourced for her days ago. It was an instrument of war, a declaration that she was not a pawn on the board. She wore her hair unbound, her face bare, and met the eyes of the stranger in the glass. The woman looking back was forged anew from the one who'd sat in that office 6 weeks ago. Harder, honed by loss, and no longer content to be a shadow. "Dressed for war, I see," Luca observed from the doorway. "Is that not what this is?" "Yes, I suppose it is." He crossed to her, making a slight adjustment to her collar. "You do not need to speak. Your presence alone is a statement. Just be there, be a fortress, and let me be the sword. And what if they try to use me as a weapon against you? Then they will have made a grave miscalculation." His gaze turned to Winter. "The time for threatening you with impunity is over." They arrived to find the restaurant a fortress, sealed from the public. Sentinels guarded every entrance. Inside, the Valentino clan held court at a long table, 3 ruling brothers, their consigliere, and men whose purpose was to be living threats. Moretti, Vincent, the eldest, offered a greeting as cold as a tombstone. "And the widow Cross, we offer our sympathies for your loss." A muscle in Evelyn's jaw jumped, but she inclined her head. Luca seated her, a deliberate show of respect for all to witness, before taking his own seat. "Let us cut through the pleasantries," Luca began. "You claim the marriage contract is broken. I disagree." "Make your case." Vincent pushed a folder down the table. "The terms guaranteed Richard Cross protection in exchange for this alliance. You executed him. Therefore, you broke the pact. Richard broke faith first when he hired an assassin to murder us in public. An attack that endangered your own kin, I might add." Luca countered with his own dossier. Call records, bank transfers, witness testimony, all proving Richard engineered the hit to ignite a war between us. He was a liability to everyone. I removed that liability. Without our consent, I need no one's permission to protect my wife. Luca's voice was level but carried a core of sharpened steel. The contract unites our families through this marriage. That marriage stands. Evelyn is my wife. Therefore, the alliance holds unless she herself chooses to dissolve it. The youngest brother, Anthony, interjected. She could claim she was forced, traumatized, that you murdered her father, and now she fears for her life. Every eye in the room turned to her. She felt the weight of their collective gaze, their expectation that she would shatter or flee, or give them the very weakness they needed to burn it all down. Instead, she calmly took out her phone, her thumbs moving with purpose, and held the screen out for Vincent to read to the room. He scanned it, his expression hardening. He then read, his voice flat. My father chose his path. He tried to have me murdered for his own gain. My husband saved me. The only people I fear in this room are those who think they can use me as a pawn. The marriage stands. The alliance stands. And if you have a problem with that, you can take it up with me. Not him. The silence that followed was absolute. Vincent's brothers exchanged a look. Their lawyer hissed something urgently, but Evelyn held her ground, her gaze unwavering, projecting a pillar of sheer will to keep from breaking. Finally, Vincent smiled. It held no warmth, but it was respect. You have spirit, Mrs. Moretti. I will give you that. He turned to Luca. The alliance holds, but the terms must be renegotiated. We want a larger piece of the waterfront development, and we demand quarterly sit-downs to ensure transparency. The meetings are fine. The waterfront deal stands as written. Luca leaned back, a king on his throne. However, I will give you the first look at the new South Boston construction project. Its profit margin is identical, with fewer political headaches. The haggling stretched for another hour, finalizing details that were beyond her expertise but were clearly matters of life and death. She sat, a silent queen, her presence the seal on their pact. As they finally stood to leave, Vincent held them back. Mrs. Moretti, a word. Luca stiffened, but Evelyn consented. Vincent led her a small distance away, speaking low for her ears only. I knew your father for 2 decades. He was a brilliant man who made terrible choices, driven by a pride that would let him burn before asking for help. Vincent's eyes were sharp. You are not your father. You know when to bend, when to be steel, and when to lean on your allies. That will serve you well in this world. She typed on her phone. Is that a compliment or a warning? Both. A faint smile touched his lips. Your husband is building a new kind of kingdom, one that could change the rules for all of us. Most of the old men think he is a fool, but I think he is smart enough to succeed, especially with you at his side. Why are you telling me this? Because I have daughters, and I would pray someone would tell them the truth of the life they were choosing. He glanced at Luca, who watched them with poorly veiled suspicion. He is a dangerous man, your husband, yet he has an honor most of us lack. That makes him an anomaly. Do not mistake its value. She nodded once, understanding the gift Vincent was giving her. Intelligence, perspective, a pact born not of business, but of shared survival. In the car after the storm, Luca asked about Vincent's private words. She relayed his strange verdict, dangerous, yet honest. She trusted it, arguing Vincent had no reason to lie. Luca accepted her reasoning, then commended her for the steel she had shown under fire. She confessed to a strange marriage of terror and empowerment, a feeling he seemed to understand completely. She spoke a feeling detached from herself, but described this new persona as a vital evolution. The old her was a survivor. This new one, she felt, was learning to rule, a change she deemed necessary. She considered how violently her world had shifted. A mere 3 weeks ago, she had been a prisoner under her father's thumb. Now, the wife of a kingpin, she had stared down violent men and won. The profound scale of this adaptation, contrary to all logic, did not frighten her. Instead, she saw the transformation as becoming who she was meant to be. The following weeks settled into a strange rhythm of normalcy. She grew close to her niece, Emma, teaching her sister, Sarah, to sign, thereby carving out a small kingdom of her own. Luca launched a new community project, giving Evelyn significant control over its direction. They were building a complicated, unexpected domestic life, but the trauma lingered as a ghost in her sleep. Recurring nightmares of guns and her father's face, a sign the wound had not yet healed. Luca was her constant anchor in the storm, reinforcing her sense of safety again and again. 2 months after their union, she felt a definitive shift inside her. She watched Luca in the morning light, a perfect tableau, a sign of her deepening transference as he turned and greeted her. He asked if she was coping with the night's events. She countered by offering to resume teaching sign language at his new center. When he questioned her readiness, she reframed her silence not as a flaw, but as a unique teaching asset, admitting she was weary of concealment. His expression was filled with approval and pride. He gave her full control over the program. She then declared her intention to begin specialized trauma therapy. He praised this act of self-awareness, reinforcing his support with a proud kiss and affirming words. Her question regarding therapy hung in the air. His pause was an answer in itself. When pressed, he admitted his own demons required professional attention. She then suggested they face their shared history together in counseling. He deflected with a dark joke about their case study complexity before closing the space between them. To build something stable from their violent beginning, he agreed to joint therapy. They found a Dr. Chen, a specialist whose composure was impervious to their history of bloodshed and crime. The work began on Evelyn's deep traumas, her father's murder, her stolen voice, and 13 years of being erased, as well as the profound mistrust that defined them. Both had been forged in a world where trust was a fatal weakness. The work was brutal. Evelyn left sessions feeling flayed open, while Luca's agitation manifested as a tightly coiled physical rage. Incrementally, they moved from a partnership of survival to the fragile architecture of a marriage. 6 months into their union, Luca came home radiating a distress he could not conceal. Evelyn, in the middle of learning a simple domestic task, saw the storm in him instantly and moved to offer shelter. His verbal denial was a reflexive, practiced defense. He corrected the lie, admitting the source of his turmoil, an offer from the federal government. For intelligence on 3 rival families, they would be granted absolute immunity. The proposition of a clean slate elicited a powerful, wordless response from Evelyn. Her gaze demanded to know his reply. He had deferred, awaiting her verdict. He laid out the conflict raging within him, the longing for a legitimate life versus the unforgivable sin of becoming an informant. She then asked about the danger, and he confirmed it would be substantial. He detailed the necessary precautions, including the possibility of disappearing entirely. Then he unveiled the core reason: to ensure their future children would never inherit his legacy of violence. He projected this hope onto her before admitting his own desperate need for a life free of ghosts. He confessed a desire for permanence, something his world could never offer. She assessed the equation, weighing the acute danger against the potential for a real life. Considering their shared ventures and a future family, she gave him a single, decisive instruction: accept the deal. He needed to hear it one last time, stressing the irreversible nature of the choice. She confirmed her resolve with a metaphor about beautiful things growing from scorched earth. His kiss was not tender but fierce, a grateful sealing of their pact. The next year was a storm as Luca's testimony dismantled 3 criminal syndicates. They weathered credible threats on their lives, necessitating a month-long disappearance into a secure location. Simultaneously, their legitimate projects flourished. The community center opened its doors, and Luca's businesses thrived, recasting them as philanthropists, a flawed but convincing transformation. A permanent consequence was Luca's total ostracism from his former world, with lingering threats that demanded constant vigilance. Yet the new life felt more real than the old one. 14 months after their vows, Evelyn missed a menstrual cycle. 3 positive pregnancy tests confirmed it. She entered a quiet state of reflection, contemplating the genetic and psychological legacy their child would inherit. When Luca returned, she presented the evidence without a word, prompting a long, heavy silence from him. His reaction was a powerful, almost crushing embrace as he held her. He asked about her feelings. She acknowledged her fear, but affirmed her readiness. He then confessed his own deep terror of fatherhood. Haunted by the monstrous example his own father had set, she proposed they would learn together. Laughter, sharp and broken, escaped him, followed by tears. They shared the news at a weekly family dinner. His sister Sarah reacted with an ecstatic cry that set off a chain of emotional displays. Ben, his brother-in-law, offered a look of such genuine warmth it signaled a complete healing of their past. Sarah began to paint an idealized future for the child, mapping out a perfect life. Luca cut through the fantasy with a wry comment that the kid would likely be born hypervigilant. Sarah immediately reframed this potential trauma as a valuable family asset. The pregnancy was fraught with medical complications and a constant low hum of anxiety over the fetus's viability. Luca became hyper-attentive, a shadow at every appointment, channeling his own fear into the methodical, solitary construction of the nursery. At 8 months, Evelyn experienced a profound cognitive shift. Looking back, she saw her entire traumatic past, the forced marriage, the violence, her father's death, not as random cruelty, but as a necessary, brutal path that had led her precisely to this moment. She brought up the violent genesis of their relationship. Luca admitted his deep regret for the transactional and brutal nature of their beginning, expressing a quiet wish that they could have had a normal courtship, free from the foundation of trauma. He then countered his own regret, theorizing their jagged psychological edges were uniquely suited to each other, a fit only their violent circumstances could have revealed. He regretted her pain, he clarified, but not the outcome. She replied that the trauma was inseparable from the woman she had become. She would not change a single moment of her past, she stated. He prompted her to define the person she was now. She described her new self through her fearlessness of silence, a core of self-worth that could not be shaken, and the capacity to dominate any room, no matter the threat. She would teach her child, she added, that a voice could take many forms, each one powerful. Luca quietly voiced his admiration for her continuous evolution, calling it a source of his deepening love. She closed the conversation with a silent gesture of connection. He found his way to the bed, curling up beside her amid the unassembled nursery furniture. They lay there, feeling the stir of life between them, contemplating a future that was improbable, perfect, and worth defending with their lives. Their child arrived on a snowy February evening, 3 weeks early and eager for the world. They named her Catherine Rose for the grandmothers she would never know. As the nurse placed the infant in Evelyn's arms, a profound chemical wave of attachment washed over her. This tiny person with Luca's dark eyes and her own stubborn jawline was the symbol of their war. Every impossible choice and severed tie, every moment of terror and hope that they could build a life from the wreckage. Luca stood beside the bed, one hand on Evelyn's shoulder, the other tracing the baby's impossibly small fingers. Tears welled in his eyes, his face a mask of profound disbelief. "We made a person," he murmured, "a whole human." Evelyn smiled, the expression a mixture of deep exhaustion and utter fulfillment. She reached for her phone, typing with one-handed difficulty. "We made a family." "Yes," he affirmed, "we did." He kissed her forehead, then Catherine's. "I will spend my life making sure you both know you are loved, safe, and wanted. Everything I never was. Everything I wasn't either." "We break the cycle," he vowed. An hour later, Sarah and Ben arrived with Emma, who was now walking and speaking in the unique dialect of toddlers. She stood on her toes to peer into the bassinet, her eyes wide with wonder. "Baby," she announced. "My baby." "Your cousin," Sarah corrected with a gentle laugh. "You'll be the best big cousin, won't you?" Emma nodded seriously before beginning a long, one-sided conversation with Catherine. That night, long after the visitors had gone and Catherine was asleep, Luca climbed into the narrow hospital bed with Evelyn, ignoring a nurse's protest about its capacity. "Report your thoughts," he asked softly. Too tired for typing, she simply handed him her phone, where the words were already waiting. "I am contemplating the distance we've traveled, from a forced contract to this, from strangers to parents, from a life of survival to something that feels like joy. If you had shown me this future 2 years ago, I would have said it was impossible. And I am realizing that despite all the trauma, loss, and violence, I would not change the path that brought me here, to you, and to her." He read the text twice, his throat working against a surge of emotion. Placing the phone aside, he gathered her carefully into his arms, mindful of the IV lines and her healing body. "I don't deserve you," he whispered, "either of you. But I will spend every day of my life trying to earn this family, this second chance." She patted his chest twice. It was their code for "I love you," developed for moments when words felt inadequate or typing was impossible. He returned the gesture, a familiar rhythm ingrained over months of shared understanding. The future remained an unknown quantity, shadowed by Luca's past. And yet, for the first time, Evelyn felt no trace of her old, familiar dread. She owned her own power now, not in sound, but in action, in choice, and in the family she was building. She had a partner who saw her strength and challenged her to use it. She had a daughter who would be raised to know that silence can be a weapon, love can be complex, and families are built by will, not just by blood. 3 months on, the community center hosted its opening day. Evelyn's sign language class had 15 students enrolled, a diverse group hungry for connection. The center offered job training, counseling, and education, a sanctuary for all the people who, like them, had been left behind. Luca's words on atonement and civic duty resonated through the hall, a starkly potent message from a man forged in darkness. The mayor and city elders watched, their presence lending an air of hard-won validation. From the back, Evelyn held Catherine close, a warm weight against her heart, witnessing her husband transform the shards of their past into a foundation for good. When the applause subsided, his gaze cut through the crowd to find hers, a smile of pure, unguarded devotion on his face. The moment was interrupted by a local reporter asking for a statement on their new foundation. Luca fielded the questions, then the journalist turned to Evelyn. Mrs. Moretti, regarding the sign language class you teach, could you articulate why it is so meaningful for you? Evelyn retrieved her phone, her fingers composing a message she then held out. I was silenced in an accident 13 years ago. For a long time, I allowed that quiet to be my cage. But silence has its own lexicon. You simply have to learn how to listen differently. I teach so that others can find their voice, because everyone deserves to be understood with or without spoken words. The reporter recited her text to the camera, and Evelyn felt a tectonic shift inside. This was her voice, reborn not in sound, but in purpose, quieter, yet infinitely more powerful for its deliberate nature. That night in the penthouse, with Catherine asleep in her crib, Luca led Evelyn to the balcony overlooking the city's electric veins. The panorama was constant, yet their place within it was profoundly altered. I understood something today, he said, his arm drawing her near. We didn't just survive. We rebuilt something whole from the wreckage. We took violence and created a sanctuary. We turned a contract into a covenant. She leaned into him, typing on her phone. We're still a work in progress. Exactly, that is the entire point. We don't need to be flawless. We just have to keep choosing this, choosing to be better together. I choose you every single day, especially when it's hard. He turned her gently, his hands cupping her face. I choose you too. You, Catherine, and all the chaos to come. This is my home. This is what I defend. It is my entire reason for being. She met his lips in a kiss, there on the terrace that was once her prison and was now their sanctuary. The metropolis sprawled beneath them, a grid of endless possibility and latent danger, teeming with millions of souls. In that city, countless others were making decisions that would seal their fates. In that moment, Evelyn chose her bond, her partner, and the beautiful, complex life she had sculpted from the ashes of who she used to be. Her father had sought to make her a footnote. The crash had stolen her ability to speak. The world had conspired to erase her, but she refused to fade. She discovered resilience in stillness, authority in her own will, and a profound love in the most impossible of circumstances. She was no longer merely present, she was undeniable, a partner, a mother, a mentor, the master of her destiny. The silent bride had reclaimed her voice, not through sound waves, but through deliberate acts. It was a voice built from the life she chose, the family she guarded, and the future she was actively forging. And that reality, she knew, as Catherine murmured in her sleep and Luca held her beneath the stars, was more than enough. It was a form of grace,